Hello.
My like thing in life every time I enter a Zoom meeting to just like have a smile and start waving, and you should see people's faces light up. Like they might not even know me, which is my favorite, I think, and just like okay, totally unrelated to what we're talking about. Welcome to Leading Through Stories. Today we're talking about gratitude and the positive impacts it can have on our lives. With me today is Helen Rose, who's passionate about grief, Mary Michaelethes, who's an educational leader, and of course me, Christy Wolf, and I believe in the power of stories. For those of you joining us for the first time, please take a look at the show notes, which you would just scroll down on YouTube to find those, because that's where we put information about who we are and why we started Leading Through Stories.
So we would be remiss in not taking this opportunity to thank you, our community. Your feedback has been very instrumental in many of our conversations and actually in some of the podcasts that we have been putting together. There was a question that was posed not long ago, and we thought it would be a good one to kind of think about as we head into this podcast. How do you move forward in a field that feels maybe hopeless, maybe demoralized? Like, how do we get out of that darkness sometimes? As we kind of go into today, we'll be talking about how can we lead with gratitude. We believe that everyone is a leader. Everyone that from where they stand has an opportunity to lead. We all have stories to share, and our podcasts are very specific about content, but more than that, they're about learning how to be better leaders and actually how to be a better leader in ourselves and how do we collectively support our leadership skills via these conversations.
So ahead of time, we asked our community, what does gratitude look like in your life? Because it is different for everyone. And how do you receive gratitude? And what I want to add on to that is, and when should you give it and when should you receive it? I guess that's what we're going to say. And good morning, everyone. Everyone's saying good morning. Cheryl, who I can't wait to meet. Annette Stanwyck, good morning, Annette. And Stephanie, hello back.
And Helen, just so you know, my mom, Cheryl, is coming next Wednesday, and she'll be here for a while. So we will have to find a time to connect together. I think that would be delightful.
Yeah.
Friends that are on, if you want to write in the chat, what does gratitude look like in your life? How do you receive gratitude? We will come back to those questions a little further down. We're going to start chatting about things. But if you had some thoughts that you wanted to get in there, please feel free to write it. We like to pull it in and talk about what other people think, not just our amazing ideas. I don't know if this is happening for everybody else, but I'm getting full, everything's changing on my screen over and over. Hopefully that's not happening for you guys, but.
Not happening for me, but I am hearing the pounding, so I might need to excuse myself for about 30 seconds. We've got some renos going on, and I thought I told them to stop, but maybe I wasn't loud enough anyway.
Grateful for renos, not for the noise while you're trying to go live.
Oh, and so grateful for the team that we've got working with us. One of the challenges that we were faced with was a bit of a challenge in looking at the details of a reno. And I was just so grateful that, our contractor sat back and listened and kind of said, you know what, we'll take that into consideration. And often you don't get that. Anyway, That was a bit of an aside, but again, very grateful.
Well, and I think that, sorry, now we're going to go totally off topic, but I agree. If you don't make your voice heard, you can't be upset that nothing happens with it moving forward. Maybe nothing will happen, but if I at least say it, I have that feeling of okay, I've said what I've needed to say. And that came up for me this week in my life in another area as well. But let's get back to gratitude. Well, what is gratitude?
Yeah, that's really important. You said that, Christy, because if we're going to lead into the next part, what is the gratitude is if you don't say what you're grateful for, or if you don't say what you need in your life, then you become that victim. And and then that's when the bitterness comes in and the unhappiness and all that. So that was really good timing. We didn't even plan that.
We didn't plan it at all.
Wow.
You can tell we're not even reading off our notes right now.
And it reminds me of the importance of relationships, right? How can we actually think about gratitude without relationships being kind of that umbrella around it through thick and thin? Your comment a little earlier for one of our participants, community members, how do you move forward when we feel challenged or hopeless or disappointed? And it's interesting, some of the research that I've been doing, negative emotions kind of make us sick. But when we think about those positive emotions, really thinking about demonstrating that gratefulness for processes or procedures or ways that we do things, it actually makes us healthier. So it's interesting.
Well, and I was telling these ladies, we've had some bad news in our lives, and like that idea of like finding ways to talk about gratitude with our kids and feelings with our kids and recognizing that in ourselves has really played a big part. So I was showing them, you guys probably know we have Post-it notes that we hold up if somebody's talking for too long or we haven't moved on to what we're supposed to be talking about. So the one that I held up today was, "You're my happy place," because right now that connection with other people who inspire me and who I look up to is a really important part to making sure that I am thinking about gratitude even when there's grief. So, what is gratitude? What does it look like in your life? What do you guys think?
Oh boy. You know, I have to say, just on that note, yesterday, Christy, when you popped by my house with that beautiful card with the heart and it says, "I'm grateful for you," you know, as a receiver of that gratitude, it really does make you feel the love, and it's not, there was nothing intent, there was no intent other than, "I'm just grateful for you." And I don't know if you guys have ever had this, you know, I have said this to people, you know, I'm so grateful for you, and I think it throws them off at first because it's like, huh? You know, it's about receiving it, right? If you're not ready to receive it, there's nothing you need to give back either when you have that. I mean, obviously back at you, "I'm grateful for you" as well, and Mary, but you know,
like a smile.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's like, so Helen's talking about my happy heart day card. So I don't send Christmas cards, and it might be because I'm just late. Like maybe I'm just 2 months late, but heart day is really important in our family, congenital heart awareness day. It happens to be Valentine's too. So I make a big deal about that. And I love that, dropping off those cards for people and sending them in the mail when you're just, I mean, maybe now people expect it, but lots of times you're like, oh, it's an easy way to show people that you're thinking about them, reconnect with them a little. And so that, I don't know, it makes me super happy. So it just made me think that I'm going to put the Happy Heart Day visual in the takeaway email.
That's a great idea. And, you know, it's interesting to kind of hear our community share their perspective. Gratitude is like just stop and reflecting what's on my mind right now and what's right in the world. We know there's enough out there that makes us feel very disappointed, angry, frustrated, depressed, anxious. That antidote of that is gratitude. And sometimes individuals may think about that as fluff, but we know from a lot of the research that's out there that gratitude is like the fertilizer for the brain. There's some incredible research that's been done. You know, Robert Edmonds, he's a prof at the University of California, talked about us demonstrating gratitude for each other fertilizes who we are as human beings. And I just thought that was fascinating to hear. And so interesting.
Yeah. You know, to that point, Mary, is when, so if you're staying in a room of 1,000 people, 999 love you and one doesn't, that's what you're going to zero in. But
oh my God, every time.
Yeah, but I'm going to counter that too by saying, when you say to someone genuinely, "I am so grateful for you," they will remember that, even in their moments of you know, just looking at some of the notes here. Stephanie, she says, "It reminds me to find the positive in all the situations and celebrate the journey." And that's absolutely right. But what I would caution people is, when you're watching someone going through something, you don't tell them what they should be grateful for, right? Yeah, because maybe they're not ready to think about it. It's not, it isn't all, you know, I always quite often talk about, you know, floating over a flower bed and everything's fine. You know, you got like the Greek olive branches around your head and stuff, and you're floating over, and sometimes your dress is stuck in the mud. It's up to the person to absorb when they're grateful for something. You still go through that process, right? You know what I mean?
I have a question for both of you and everybody in the audience, of course. Here's a question. How do you lift yourselves up with gratitude?
So for me, like those heart day cards, I'm sorry, I like you and I want to send it to you, but I do it for me, because the rush I feel when somebody says thank you is like, oh, yes, like it just makes you feel so good. And I think that that's a part of it, that I come out smiling. Maybe I think about it ahead of time. I get to make a little plan. That the actual action, like maybe you're not there and that's okay. And maybe I never hear from you about it, but I know that it's happened. And that for me is one of those examples of like that just the action of doing it makes a big difference to how I'm feeling.
Helen, how about you? How do you lift yourself up?
So I really, for me, I mean, you guys know my story. There's, I'm one of those people that knows everybody, but my bubble is very small in my world. And when I tell someone I'm grateful for them, I truly mean it. And it does, it makes me feel good. And it reminds me out loud what I am grateful for instead of focusing on the other stuff that is kind of, dragging down. Right. So yeah.
These Post-it notes that I have are actually, I bought them specifically to take them and put them on people's computers at work. Just like when they're not there, to slip it in there, because like who doesn't need a positive message? And I think a lot of that came from like reading books like Martin Seligman with Positive Psychology. That is something that I really care about. The other book that I have to bring up is Lorraine Widmer Carson's book. This is one, An Ecology of Gratitude. She's a Bow Valley author, and she's talking about gratitude and writing. And I've been doing this. It's set up to be like a daily activity, and I am like committing to once a week activity, but a lot of it is focused on gratitude and some of the research behind it. And it just like makes you stop and think again about, how do I do this? Sometimes it just needs to be in my own space and it's not for somebody else, and it's just me thinking about it. And other times I want it to be a little bit bigger than that. And so,
Chrissy, you remind me of a comment that we've been having a conversation about. How are we intentional about this thing called gratitude? And when we're intentional about it, that it affirms, the positiveness that we kind of need to live through as we take a look at some of the challenges that we're faced with. In looking at the University of College of London, they talked about significant research surrounding, and we've seen some of you talk about something called the journal, a gratitude journal. And there were two pieces that kind of stood out for me. One of the studies was, here's a journal. You've got 2 weeks. Every day, we want you to voice some gratitude. And they noticed that after 2 weeks, those individuals who really struggled with sleeping were able to actually sleep longer when they journaled before they went to bed. And the other piece that was, identified was blood pressure. Blood pressure started to decrease when individuals journaled. And I thought that the third study that they were talking about was for men, and that we saw actually some biomarkers for heart disease decreased when men in particular journaled for up to 8 weeks. So there is some research that talks about positive emotions keep us healthy. And how are we intentional about that?
You know what I'm grateful for? I'm grateful that Mary likes to read studies and tell us this information, because I never have research prepared. And I love it, Mary.
You know what? Just as she was saying that, I'm like, oh, there's our Mary. She is like the research. Oh my gosh. I love that. I love that you do that, Mary, for sure.
Yes. And just so everybody knows, every time we send away a takeaway email, this is Mary finding these awesome articles and videos. This is like her jam. And I know everything that she does with her educational leadership, like this is what it's all surrounding. So this is going to sound awful, but Helen and I feel like we just spout out what we want to say. And Mary actually has like some background.
It's true.
You two are funny. Actually, it's pretty selfish. I think I always struggle with people talking about this as fluff, kindness and empathy and gratefulness. This is well researched, and we have enough sickness, and I'm not talking about physical sickness, well, that too, but emotional sickness, that we need to look at something that says this is making a difference.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to when is it appropriate to say it to someone? It's certainly not when they're in the depths of dealing with their crappy emotions, or because those matter too. But absolutely right. It has to come to a point when you are where that does lift you up, when you're like, oh, I'm so grateful for that moment with this person or whatever. And that's well said. It isn't fluff for sure, Mary. Yeah.
And I think it really does help you reframe things. Like Negative things happen to every single person, probably every single day, and how you react to it is hugely important. And I think that for me, it took some big things happening for me to figure out how to use gratitude to respond and how to find that resilience to be able to go, okay, now what?
Yeah. You know,
we kind of missed a question. Helen, do you want to go back to what you were talking about?
Sure. So what does gratitude look like in your life?
No, when is it appropriate?
Oh, when is it appropriate? Okay. So so what I do as a coach is when someone's, no one comes to you in a space where they are full of gratitude and love. They come to you when they're really struggling and they're really stuck. So the role is, as a friend, as a partner, as a spouse, all of those things, is to walk alongside and watch someone kind of process all of their emotions. Your instinct is, mainly because you don't know how to handle it, is to say, yeah, but look what you're grateful for. 10 times out of 10, they are fully aware of what they're grateful for, but they've got to process those things. So I would say when you have a friend who's really down, don't say, oh, but you should be grateful, because they likely are grateful, but it's not up to you to decide for them. Does that, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like my friend, I have a friend whose husband died tragically, and they say to her, well, at least you have your children. And she's like, well, I know I have my children. I want my husband. It diminishes what she's trying to process.
Yeah, it's definitely got to come from the person, hey, not from the people around the person.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, just based on the weather where we live, I watch it on Facebook, and we have those really cold weeks and they're snowy and stuff. You know what? I'll get up, and I don't love -40 either, but I'm like, yeah, but gosh, those skies are beautiful blue. I'm grateful for that. Right.
Finding something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Look, Mary's thinking. I can see.
I know. Mary, what are you going to say?
I'm just thinking about, what this is all about in looking at leading through stories. So here's a question to every one of us. How do we lead with gratitude? If we lead from where we stand, what are we modeling on a daily basis? And what does that look like for us? And it doesn't have to be this grandiose, dissertation on gratitude, but how do we show up to demonstrate the importance of gratitude? And one of the things that, I'm kind of selfish, actually. And I think I may have shared the story about the Starbucks. You go to Starbucks and you go in through the drive-through, and the guy in front of me purchases my coffee. I went, oh my God, that was amazing, and I'm thinking, this is a great thing. It made me feel really great. But literally, when I go to that Starbucks, that drive-through by Kingsway in Edmonton, I always pay it forward. And probably not to make anybody else feel good. But of course, you want to make those individuals feel good. But it makes me feel really good about saying, I don't know you. And whether your coffee was $5 or $40 because you bought for everybody in the office, it didn't matter. So for me, there's, back to your question, Helen, when is it appropriate? And, and how do we receive it? Sometimes we receive it, and then there's this selfishness that I love making people feel good because it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And we were talking earlier about, as a parent, I do something called Hugs and Bugs with my kids at night. And one of the questions, we talk about the best part of their day. That's the hug. We talk about something that maybe was bugging them. But we also spend time talking about who was kind to you and who were you kind to. We talk about what are you grateful for, and Kane has his rattle off, my house, my friends, my family. He has it's scripted, and then Maverick will think about it for a minute, and the list 47 things, including my fuzzy snake, all the things into the world, which is great because that's what I want them focusing on. And also that idea of what are you looking forward to? And so I was telling these ladies that last night, both boys said, Mom, can we do questions tonight? And that tells me that they have things that they want to talk about. And we always try to pull gratitude back in there. And so that's, I don't know, makes me feel good.
I love that. One of the things that when you're talking about the gratitude journals, quite often I'll tell some of my clients who are struggling with their teenage kids, one in particular comes to mind. So what I said was, why don't you do a dad and daughter journal? And in that, it's free for all. And I used to do that with Alex when he was little. When we needed to talk about stuff, we did it outside of our house when we were on a walk. And there was no question it was off limits. But what I like about that journal is you can write in there, I love you. You make me so proud. I'm grateful for you. And it doesn't need to be said, but they're going to go back and read it when they need to, and vice versa. So both can say, if you're really angry with each other, especially you're dealing with teenage angst, the parent can go back too, because they're thinking, am I failing my kid because she's dealing with, hormones and stuff? It's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. So that's another really good journal to do between parents and kids, or even husbands.
I like it. I
like it
haven't
too.
had that idea before, so
Yeah.
thank you for that.
You know what I like those? Because sometimes people don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to say, I love you, I'm grateful for you, right? It's a vulnerable place in which to give that.
Okay, ladies, I think we need to start wrapping up.
We do.
We love talking.
I'm holding on to this, and I'm like, should I flash this on myself?
So just a reminder as we kind of bring close to today's session, thank you once again. But remember, you are going to get some bring back items from us. The first thing that we're going to send out to you is a Gratitude Attitude podcast. I think it's about 6 minutes. While you're getting dressed in the morning, having coffee, plug it in. It really talks about not only the research, but some very specific strategies in the demonstration of gratitude. And then secondly, we've got an excellent article that comes to us from Harvard. And it really is titled, Giving Thanks Could Literally Make You Happier. And what the research says, but there's some very specific strategies in that, along with something like this that you'll see at Safeway, Time Magazine, a little booklet, The Science of Happiness. And you can cut and paste from that in your home, in your line of work, with your colleagues. And then last but not least, in looking at your Take Back, Bring Back, we will be sending out an Enneagram link. Christy, I think we'll be talking a little bit more about that, but something to reflect on who you are. What are your superpowers? What are you grateful for who you are? And in that Enneagram as well, they'll give you some other insights as well.
And so our community members have asked us this question: how can I be more involved? And also, I would love to be part of this journey. So we're doing something really cool. March 16th at 7:30 p.m. We're going to do an evening episode called Leading Through Connection. So bring a friend, pour a beverage, and we'll be discussing Enneagrams. And we're going to discuss partially, I don't know if I want to do the whole thing, our results of our Enneagram. But that's going to be really fun. And then we can be really interactive and have some really good conversation.
So is it kind of
so
just
that one? Yeah, go ahead.
Is just Enneagrams or Enneagrams and more in that conversation?
I think whatever the conversation turns to. And one of the things that it says in the takeaway email is that cameras are on. This one will be a Zoom meeting. So this is where we're inviting you to come and have a conversation with us. We've really enjoyed us having a conversation, but we want to bring more people into that. So 7:30, March 16th. And one last thing I wanted to tell the people here about is that the Wolfpack Warriors Foundation is doing a live stream with a gentleman named Chad Ginter. He's from Project All In, and he does presentations on mental health for first responders and frontline workers. And I'm just going to put a link. It's coming up on March 10th, and it's available to anybody. And it's something that we're really excited to share out with people. So I'll say you can follow Wolfpack Warriors if you want to know more, because it's where I write a lot of things about it. But ladies, as always, a pleasure.
Great. Thank you, both of you. And for everyone that was here, Cheryl, I can't wait to meet you next week.
Yeah.
We'll make that plan.
And bring a friend or two. Make sure you bring a friend to that, or a husband or a child or a neighbor. The more, the merrier.
Yeah.
Love it.
Have a great